gain contact and have that conversation with the entity, with that attachment, find out what it is and why are they attached? And it's a negotiation. Kind of almost like it's kind of like a bank robbery or a bank heist. You show up and, the SWAT team, which is us, SWAT team shows up and now we're like, hey, release the hostages. Please release the hostages. What do you want? What do you want from us? What do you want? Well, you can't give them cash.
So what do they want?
And normally they're just lost. They don't know. The energy of that individual, of that they're the host, is usually something that was very familiar with them.
If you've experienced something unbelievably weird and unexplainable that left you feeling isolated and afraid, the Paranormal PTSD Recovery Podcast is for you. Each week, we go from haunting to healing by focusing on one of our 3 core focal points: personal stories, healing tips, and understanding the unknown. We help you to know that you're not crazy, you're not alone, and you can heal. Now here's your hostess, Laura Giles. Welcome to Paranormal PTSD Recovery, the show where we bring light to the shadows and help you reclaim your peace after extraordinary, unexplained, and often terrifying experiences. I'm your host, Laura Giles, and this podcast is a safe space for truth seekers, survivors, and anyone who's ever wondered if there's more to this world than what we're told. Today's episode is one you won't want to miss. Joining us today is Dr. Reverend Paul Meckes, an ordained minister with nearly 3 decades of academic research. Dr. Meckes is the host and founder of the Conscious Radio Network, a podcast that promotes global well-being by highlighting the interconnectedness of mind, body, and spirit. And he's here to talk with us about a subject that's been dramatized, feared, and often misunderstood: exorcism. But this isn't about spinning heads or Hollywood horror. This is about healing. We're diving into what exorcism really is, how it relates to trauma, and what it means for those who face dark, often uninvited forces and live to tell the tale. If you've ever felt haunted, oppressed, or spiritually stuck after a paranormal event, this conversation's for you. So settle in, take a breath. You're not alone anymore. And if this episode speaks to you or someone you know, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps more survivors to find their way to healing, and it keeps conversations like this alive. Now let's talk to Dr. Paul. Dr. Meckes, thanks for being here. You have a load of credentials. Can you share the brief version of how you got started on your road, the spiritual road, and how you ended up here?
I think it's a lifelong thing. It found me, there are some events that will happen in anybody's life that kind of just drives them in any particular direction, going, wow, what happened there? And but the yellow brick road started at the end of my last marriage, first and last. And why is it always there? I don't know. I think if it were to happen to anybody, we would think like, why can't I keep it together? What happened? Did I fail? Did what did I do wrong? What's going on? But I think there was a precursor there that was a trigger, that there was a lot more behind that tsunami. That was just the trigger. That was the breaking point of what was to lead me into the next portion of my life, realizing who I really was, or who made me ask the question, who am I? And I think everybody has those moments in their life. Some tragic event, sometimes it doesn't have to be a tragic, something that it makes us question ourselves, our existence, our purpose. And that's what it did. I started asking questions. I knew what I needed to do. I knew what I loved to do. I liked to do. My passion was always the metaphysical, the paranormal, the unexplained. What is consciousness? Why are we here? What's the purpose of life? The great philosophical questions of all the philosophers throughout history, from Socrates to Plato, even from the scientists from Newton to Einstein, using science to try to explain certain things, which is why I got into metaphysics.
I have to ask you about your affiliation with the Order of Exorcists, St. Michael Seminary. Are you a real live exorcist?
Um, I I have not. No, I am a clergy member. I'm an affiliate member of the order, and more of an investigator to a profile. I guess you would call. I don't know what a demonologist is, but that
Oh,
name gets thrown out quite a bit.
okay.
A demonologist, and you're like, what is that? But a profiler. We go in, and that has happened. That part of me, that type of job, started many years ago when I started Claremont Paranormal back in 2014, 2015, as a scientific and investigative protocols by not necessarily, and this is what the Order of the Exorcists do, which is what as a an affiliate clergy member does, is investigate the client, not necessarily the event or the phenomenon that's happened, but investigate. It's probably kind of like a private investigator to come to terms to kind of see if the credibility of that client is credible, is solid, because we don't want to further risk the psychosis and damaging the individual and making them go in deeper into psychosis, because we don't know. We don't. Do they suffer from alcohol abuse? Do they suffer from drug abuse? Do they suffer from some schizophrenia? Do they? And I've had cases like that in the past. So we go in scientifically and investigate the client, their credibility, and then we slowly move into the phenomenon. What is it that they're experiencing? It.
So, how do these people come to you? Do they come to you? I imagine they would have to come to you asking for help.
Yeah, yeah. Now with the order, with the order of exorcists, with the order of Saint Michael, the archangel, that it's similar. It goes directly through headquarters, which is in Los Angeles, with the archbishop, and but it's the same protocols too with my investigative team for the last decade. Is it goes directly to the headquarters lead investigator, and we investigate the. I forgot what the original question was. What was the original question? I think I stirred away from that a little bit.
What is if you're a real live exorcist?
Hmm. I've been involved with some cases that there were attachments. I've never been in an actual exorcism. I don't know if I'd ever want to. That's scary. I've seen I've seen some cases. I've witnessed, not firsthand, like being in, you know, being in the room, but I've seen some documentation, some actual videos, some actual footage from some cases and case studies, and even with some of the conversations I've had with the Archbishop and some other case members and some people that I've worked with in the past through my team through the years. It's something that is not, it's not for the faint of heart. I'm not an exorcist. I have participated and have worked as an agent in order to be able to help in the removal of attachments.
Okay, so let's take
Spirit.
this step by step. So somebody calls you and you come out to do the psychological evaluation. Do I have that right?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
It's a non-clinical evaluation before we get clinical. It's a credibility evaluation to
Okay.
check the credibility and investigate the client's credibility. And then we move, if we see that, yes, I think we can move the next step. And that next phase would be bringing in the clinical or medical team in
Okay.
order to do evaluation. Now, of course, the client would have to agree to that.
Uh-huh.
They have to agree to not necessarily all the steps, but there has been some steps where they kind of back away and they're like, ah, okay, they don't want to go any further.
So
Oh,
do you rule people out because they do have psychological issues or medical issues that can better explain what's happening?
no, I don't rule that out. However, sometimes that can be a reason why they're experiencing some of these events. Sometimes alcohol abuse, drug
Mm.
abuse, depending on the job. Sometimes I kind of look at what type of career does this person have. I've had some people. Some of my first cases, I've had a client that worked in the prison system. He was a guard in the state correctional facilities. Now, that is not exactly a place that's a very happy environment.
Yeah, I used to work in one.
So you can get some quite interesting attachments when you work in a facility like that. It's not quite happy. So the type of lifestyle too can, by investigating cases like that, when you start to see all of these variables, there are many, many countless variables out there that can point you in the direction as to why an individual or why the human agent is experiencing this type of phenomenon.
Okay, so if somebody works in a prison, what are some of the high risk places that people can be where they might contact entities?
Definitely law enforcement or the prison systems, the medical industry, especially those who work in hospice, end of life care, palliative care, the morgue, the medical examiner.
Mm.
But mind you, too, it depends on the human agent. It depends on the individual, because I've known people that are completely oblivious. They shut themselves off of that knowing or that recognizing of the paranormal or those types of events, that world. So when there are, and I don't mean the word ignorant as a bad word, but they become ignorant of it. They ignore it. And by ignoring that, it doesn't bother them. They don't experience these types of events. But they have been some cases where, a medical examiner would be like, wait, where did that go? Or what happened? Something moved around the room, or, something weird happened, or they hear the voice or something, or, something, something like, okay, that's spooky. Funeral homes. So yeah, it's the places that firemen, those who, that go on calls of, really tragic car accidents.
Hmm.
Military, definitely military, especially those who have seen action, who have been in battle, and who have seen these horrific events of war, can also.
So the stereotype is if you mess with a Ouija board, you're inviting it in. Is that any truth to that?
Yes and no. It depends on your belief. What do you believe? The power of belief is very, very powerful. I've used them in the past. I haven't used them in a long time, but I haven't recently used them. And through some of my studies, even one of my instructors during my degree programs, I've all asked the same question. He was like, what is it? What is actually happening? It's a divination. It's simply what it is. It's there's many forms of it. We're divinating. The only problem with with the Ouija board is it's turned into something that we're recognizing it as something that we should have more respect for than we used to. We got to be careful how we're using it. A Ouija board can do harm if we misuse it. Similar to driving an automobile. We gotta be careful using it. I've seen many people can probably vouch to this, that the first time they've used it, they were probably under the influence of something.
Mm.
They had some alcohol in them or something else or whatnot, and they were just playing games. And interestingly enough, it's sold as a board game.
Yes.
So already we're labeling it as a game
Yes.
when it shouldn't be a game. So that right there is seeding our mind, is seeding our consciousness and psyche as this is a playful thing. This is not real, blah, 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 blah. So we're already programming ourselves for a possible misrepresentation of the power of divination. And what you invite in, better be careful, because by divinating that in that type of form can potentially call in and open up and invite something that you don't want. So, yeah.
Okay. So someone calls you, you've done the psychological thing, they seem to be credible, and it looks like they have an attachment. So what happens next?
What we do is they are credible, so we have them sign the waivers. We make sure that they are 100% okay and fine with what we'll do. And there could be many steps. It could be a simple, get the rest of the group in, spiritualist healers and stuff, and or mediums and or shaman, depending on the individual, depending on their beliefs, depending on of their religion, depending on what their background is, heritage is, because we don't want to offend them. That's not it. This is a spiritual matter, and there are some waivers that they got to. That if by any chance, and nobody's ever been injured in it, most of the time these attachments are just very small. Nothing like The Exorcist and Linda Blair shooting stuff across the room and crawling on the ceiling. Nothing at all like that. That's the worst of the worst. That I've never seen that happen. But yes, if you got some waivers you got to sign. That if you're ever, if you're injured or anything, that you're not held accountable for your injuries, and legal statements and stuff like that, or legal waivers. And then we go and bring in the priest or a spiritualist healer or a medium or a pastor, minister, and we'll usually get in touch with this entity and find out who, why. And this is part of I would say it's part of the paranormal investigation, and what people would normally consider. Oh, we're going to go into a house, what's going on, and seeing that. Normally, it's instead of investigating the house, we're investigating the individual. There's that attachment, but going in, we find out who, what, why, what's going on. Gain contact and have that conversation with the entity, with that attachment. Find out what it is and why. Why are they attached? It's a negotiation. It's almost like it's kind of like a bank robbery or a bank heist. You show up, and the SWAT team, which is us, SWAT team shows up, and now we're like, hey, get rid. Release the hostages, please. Release the hostages. What do you want? What do you want from us? What do you want? Well, you can't give them cash.
So what do they want?
And normally they're just lost. They don't know the energy of that individual, of that they're the host, is usually something that was very familiar with them. That was like it was their energy. There was something that was. Well, one normally it's because of the entity that was in their house. They're like, that was an attachment, and it was like, oh, you're in my house. I'm gonna attach.
That makes sense.
Become attached to you, and
Yeah.
it's like or it's a familiar. It's something that they had the similar energy of someone that entity, that spirit once knew in that previous life before they passed, or something. There's something familiar with that energy or vibration that was familiar, and they just attach themselves to it.
And are the entities, the entities that are attached, are they always people, or could they be something else?
Most of the time, pretty much most of the time, I'd say probably 98% of the time, they are spirits that were once in human form, in the human body. We're alive.
And the rest of the time?
And the other 1%, 2%, which is not that often, could have been entities that have not been in human form. Most of them are referred to as demons. Most of them referred to as jinn, and other parts of the world are referred to as other entities. But here in the Western society, known as demons. The jinn are actually also a common demon, but you've got other forces out there. I think they're all the same. To be honest with you, they're all the same. It's just they're just spirits. The conscious spirits that have never incarnated in a human form. I'd say there's more important things to do out there in the cosmos and the universe than to inhabit a human body.
So how do you get them to go away? What are they, what's the bargaining chip?
The bargaining chip for the non-demon ones, the ones that have been in body, is you got to convince them that there's much better things for them. There's much better I wouldn't say life, but the light. But pass over. Eternity continues. It continues on and it moves on. They're remaining stagnant and they've stopped. They're stuck in this kind of like Groundhog Day. I'm sure everybody's probably seen that movie Groundhog Day. It just plays over and over and over and over and over again. I would hate being in a situation like that and have no control. Because the thing is like when you're in spirit and you're interacting with the world of time and the third dimension, it kind of gets. I've experienced certain things like this during states of meditation and through plant medicines and stuff like that. That it's just, I don't know. I'd want to reincarnate. I would want to move forward and reincarnate, come back in the body and experience life, experience the warmth of the sun and experience the sunsets and the sunrises and the cool breeze against your face instead of just having this timeless rut of endless play over and over and over again. And not only that, it's to connect with their loved ones that have passed over, to move, just move on, move to that next dimension, that next sphere of the spirit world, because we all coexist. We all exist. We are all coexisting at the same time, same place, space and time. We're all coexisting together. It's just we can't perceive it being in body. They can perceive all this stuff like going on, but it's like move forward, keep going. It's a dead end.
And what about the demons? What do they want? How do you get them out?
Normally, that's an attachment where that it's something that the individual has opened up. They've called them in, and sometimes it's by mistake. Sometimes it's something that they did consciously, and it's like, oh crap. I am the cases that I have that I have been associated with, but that I've heard some of the cases that some of my colleagues have been in. All of these cases that were demonic were cases that the client was responsible for, were fully 100% responsible for, or yes, that they opened up the door, they brought them in. It's like though, and then very rarely the cases that the client didn't bring them in, but the demons did, are connections of the bloodline, whichever bloodline that family is. It's something that had followed that particular family, because on the other side, many sides in other dimensions, time does not exist.
Right.
I mean, 1 minute, 1 year to us is like 1 second to them.
Yeah.
Time just does not exist at all. There's past, present, and future. Everything is one thing. So the attachment in particular bloodlines is actually a common thing, and it's been documented. It's been studied through history. Just look at some of the cases. The most talked about cases are, look at the Kennedy family. Talk about possibly the Kennedy family has an attachment, and that's why there's such bad luck with.
Never thought of that.
Right? And there was one I saw there was a documentary within the last year that I saw that there was a couple family members that people don't even know about. I mean, everybody's familiar about JFK, but nobody's familiar about before JFK. What was JFK's father and his father? That there were actually some things that they were into prior to us even knowing about that could have caused that and triggered it.
So when the demons are dislodged, where do they go?
Into the eternity of space. It's there's many,
just out.
Yeah, just out there.
Okay.
Out there everywhere. And that's what's interesting too, is like when I said they coexist, we pretty much coexist with them. It's the only thing that separates us from them is our vibration, is how we want to separate. And that is why that attachment happens, is because if we lower our vibration low enough and just invite them in, then they'll come in. But
okay.
And we got to be, we're obviously conscious of it, but that's how thin that veil is. And it's thin, but it's not thin. because it is a conscious, it is a metaphysical level of consciousness there, that and vibration, a field, a wall that vibrates, that separates us from always in contact with us, to compare to just opening up that door.
So I know that you said you don't have never done an exorcism personally, but you have seen them. So what's the scariest thing that you have heard of or witnessed?
So the individual, the priest delivering the exorcism, delivering the cantations and the prayers, will go through levels of perception, alterations of their perception, where everything their senses, their sense of smell, sight, touch, hearing, seeing, everything will completely be distorted. They'll smell death. They'll smell, just if you ever walked into, drove alongside the road and just smelled a dead animal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's horrible. That's not.
Yeah.
Worse than that. It's worse than that smell. Worse than that. And just imagine adding the feeling of it. Not only smelling it, but feeling it. Like you feel death. People are like, well, what's death feel like? I don't know. I don't know, and I don't want to know. That's how scary it is. It is something that will, to the point where you will probably not sleep for the rest of your life.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just it's horrible, and hence one of your shows, Paranormal PTSD. Whoa, that would really throw somebody into. Now, if somebody, like, for military personnel who have quite possibly experienced this, that's why I feel too that they could possibly be experiencers of stuff like that, especially those who have seen combat. Seeing things, demons, lower vibration entities can really mess with your perception of sight. You can see things that are not there. You can see blood on the walls that are not there. You can see the space in the room change, that's not really happening. You can see things that are not really, or hear things that are not really happening. Hear the voices of the demons, them talking to you, or when somebody else in the room, another bishop in the room is not actually hearing it. Only you can hear it. It's speaking to you, and while no one else is hearing it. Feeling things other than death itself, but feeling things that they can get physical. Like the Archbishop that I've worked with, that's the head of the Order of Exorcists. He said he almost died, and this was, I'm not sure how, 15, 20 years ago. I think this happened, maybe less than that. When he was doing an exorcism, he was hit by a 2x4.
Yikes.
The entity threw a 2x4 across the room and hit him right here in the side. And at first, he didn't think it really did anything. I mean, it hurt like hell. He did have to go to the hospital, but then when he did have to go to the hospital, they found out that it punctured a rib or something, broke a
Oh
rib.
gosh.
And then later on, it ended up causing more damage and a blood clot and something else, but it almost killed him.
Oh wow.
It really almost killed him. So these entities can get quite physical, because what they feel, what we feel as investigators too, is they want to create misery. That's their goal, is to create complete long-term misery, as long of a term of misery in any subjects involved in their possession as possible. So,
So
like I said, it's very
what are the
rare.
symptoms like for somebody who just has a run-of-the-mill attachment? How would they know they have one?
For just an attachment, and that usually starts as an infestation, or like an oppression, but usually an infestation is where somebody is kind of takes on attributes where they're not really themselves all the time, kind of like just getting into alcohol or getting into drugs or doing things that they just normally don't do. Like, they're just, people are like, well, ain't that possession? No, not really. You'll know you are not you if you're possessed, period. You won't even remember it. Just doing things you normally don't do, and sometimes not remembering too much of it, but you kind of just, almost of a flip of a hat. Like, one day you'll do this, one day you'll be normal, and then like the next minute you're kind of like, you kind of fly off into this like weird weird spell, some sort, and take on things that you normally wouldn't do, say things you normally wouldn't say, and kind of act. And most people will. Some people won't notice it. Some people won't notice it. Sometimes it's an internal. Sometimes it can be an internal thing. Sometimes voices. Well, people will be like, "Well,"
Mm.
like I've talked about, like intuition. Listen to your intuition. When people are like, "Well, isn't that your? How would you know if that's your intuition or, you know, an entity trying to attach to it?" Like sometimes we just know. We just know. Um, but and then kind of just mood swings. Like we'll just get into these mood swings that are just not our normal selves. We'll know it.
So it feels off.
Yeah, because we'll even feel off. We're like, what is wrong with me? It's like
Okay.
we'll step away. Because we do that all the time. We'll usually, like almost on a daily basis, we'll step away from ourselves and we'll analyze something. Where we go, dude, what is that? Like, what am I doing? you know, and those things are that we're conscientious of quite a bit.
Okay. So what kind of training do you have to have? Is it religious or is it like a class? What do you do to become an investigator or an exorcist?
So the Order of Exorcist does have a whole course, a whole class, several different classes you go through training. And I think there's like what eight. There's like 8 or 12 different. I'm still going through it. And aside from my other investigations, but it's not that different than the work that I've done aside from the order. And but as an exorcist, that would take quite a bit of work because you need the blessing of the church. That you definitely need. That's some really heavy duty ecclesiastical duties that you have to work with, and have the blessing of the Pope, and the blessing of the bishop or the archbishop. Absolutely. For general investigation, yeah, it's just being able to have that knack for investigating, have that that desire to be able to look for things that search for clues. And definitely you definitely got to have people skills. You definitely have to have people skills, and definitely have the ability to man, some words I can't find. It's like empathy. There we go. You definitely got to have some empathy, because if you're not a people person, it's definitely not a field to be in.
Okay. So in researching for this podcast, I ran across a advertisement, I guess, for people to obtain spiritual releasements through Reiki, which was kind of surprising for me. And, Reiki is energy healing. Is what you do anything like this?
Yeah, yeah. Can Reiki can help. Reiki is definitely a modality that can help, and it might be something that somebody can get in after an investigation to it's kind of like a maintenance. Can be a maintenance thing. And
Okay.
I've offered those types of modalities to some of my clients after the investigation as a consultation or a counseling. So hey, to maintain your vibration, your energy, to neutralize and get rid of, and to kind of keep these attacks. If they were vulnerable at first, if they were vulnerable once, they can be
Hmm.
vulnerable again, as long as
Hmm.
you help maintain your energetic field.
So
And
what is the
maintain that.
aftercare for something like that typically?
And normally something like that is simple. It's all in here. It's belief, it's mental, it's mind, body, and spirit. It's kind of balancing the mind, body, and spirit. Is some of those who have been severely attacked don't really have, most of the cases that I've had, they didn't have a faith. They didn't have a faith.
Ah,
And when they found the faith, because I tell you what, after the case is over with, they're like, oh, wow, I believe in God. I believe that there's something bigger out there that was watching me. And they started going to church, or they started practicing something. They started, attending a spiritualist church or an organization, and they started looking into themselves a little bit more. They started connecting more to their own divinity. their own divine self, and help maintain that vibration. Reiki, Qigong, Tai Chi, yoga. Change your diet. Diet's very important when it comes to spiritual, raising your vibration, which is why I don't drink. I do not drink alcohol. Hence, that's where the word spirits come from. And
Yes.
originally, believe it or not, spirits were not originally alcohol. They didn't originally have alcohol in them. They were non-alcoholic. They came from flowers or plants and stuff like that, and they were distilled into bottles, and it was actually a medicine. And then at some point, someone had a good idea, like, ooh, maybe we should ferment them, and then they bottle it up. Next thing you know, they got drunk off of it, and then it became an addiction.
Yeah. So when somebody calls for help, is it a one and done type of thing, or is this something that could be ongoing?
Sometimes it can be ongoing. Most usually within the most I've had was three
Mm.
visits, but usually after the sometimes it was the most. Yeah, so the most was three visits. Then, but the majority of them were two visits. We go back and kind of like do a follow up and kind of make sure everything's all good. And but usually at the end of because we'd always have to do a follow up anyway. And usually by that time we kind of touch a little bit on something to kind of like change something, or kind of bring in a modality that is or to double check to make sure it's like, oh, okay, so everything's all good, all right, or to follow up on the case. But most of the time we can take care of it on one. But the cases that I've been with, usually the first time. After the first, it's pretty
Okay.
much said and done.
So also in doing research for this podcast, I found I guess, protocol called Spirit Releasement Therapy, or SRT. And on this particular page, and I don't know if this is typical to all SRT or just this particular practitioner, it recommends that everybody gets a spiritual releasement therapy periodically, like kind of doing a parasite cleanse, because everybody has attachments. Do you agree with that?
I'm not too familiar, to be honest with you, of SRT. I've heard of it, but I'm not too familiar with it. By the way you explained it, I kind of get an idea of it. I could see there could be other modalities of doing it, of other ways, other ways to do it. What's a common way of what's a common SRT?
I don't know.
No, yeah, I don't know either. I'm assuming it's something where you kind of do some sort of a relaxation type thing or a meditation, and then you kind of go into a way of maybe I would assume you don't use chemicals or any type of things. I mean, I don't know. Meditation, visualization, then intention, using the power of an intention to release certain energy. And I guess this would probably be a practice that would be used. But like I said, I'm not too familiar with it. I've heard it's I've heard it before, but I haven't researched it.
But do you think people should do it on a regular basis, or some sort of spiritual cleansing thing?
If they feel that they're vulnerable, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And most of the time we do it anyway. We do it unconsciously without us knowing it anyway. I feel that we do it. I feel that we kind of do it subliminally and unconsciously. I wouldn't say every day, but when we need it, we kind of do it, because we always have these these little habits and stuff like that of these little totems or these little things that a rabbit, some people, I don't even know if anybody puts rabbit's foot on their keychains anymore. It's been a long time since I've seen those.
Same. Yeah.
Or some taboos that, don't open up an umbrella indoors,
Right.
or don't walk underneath a ladder, or don't cross the path of a black cat, or if you're out on sea, don't cross the moon line. All these superstitions and stuff. There's so many out there. But I'm sure that everybody has some sort of and it is a superstition, I feel. And it's a power of belief. So if you believe that you need to do it.
Okay.
There's nothing. It doesn't hurt. I definitely believe it doesn't hurt. I mean, what's the worst thing to happen?
Right. Okay.
Right?
So years ago, I saw an article that said there was a shortage of exorcists, and Catholics were asking for exorcists like in record numbers. Are you seeing the same type of trend?
It was a few years ago where, actually, more than a few years ago. This is about a decade or so ago. I remember hearing that the Vatican or the Catholic Church in general kind of got away from exorcisms in general. And for many years, even some of these cases, I've heard some of the historical cases recorded was that the church never wanted to really do them anyway. It was something that was, left up to, the shamans and the hoodoo, practitioners, which they'll take it on. I mean, if I couldn't find a Catholic church or, an Orthodox, religious sect to do it, I believe it. Believe me, I'd probably go drive out west into like Sedona, Arizona, and find a Native American tribe and say, "Hey, I need help."
Yeah. So on that note, if somebody's out there listening to this and saying, "You know what? I think that's my problem. I need to look into getting a depossession." What qualities would you suggest that they look for in their helper?
Well, as far as so the qualities of the practitioner of someone that would be the exorcist, definitely first, if they're going to go with an Orthodox Catholic or Jewish or even I would research what they're comfortable with depending on their religion. If they if they have a particular religion that they grew up in, specifically, like if you're Jewish, definitely seek out a rabbi. If you're Haitian or from the Caribbean or even African or anything like that, you can seek a babalao, which is mostly for those out there who are familiar with Santeria or Santero. That's a ancient culture and religion of the Yoruba culture, and that's where Santeria came from. But it's mingled with Roman Catholic, Orthodox Roman Catholic symbolism. But a Babalao is a priest, is a Santerian priest. So you can use those. A Native American medicine man. I wouldn't just go out and check, you know, go out to a spiritualist store or, a shop or something like that, or a psychic. Definitely just don't go to a psychic. Esmeralda with this neon sign in the front window and stuff like that,
Why not? Okay.
there's a demon in my house and I
Okay.
will charge you $5,000 exorcise the demon. And they never got the $5,000 back, nor did the demon ever get exorcised.
Okay. Okay.
And then we go in, we find out there was no demon.
Mm.
It was the grandmother that had passed over or had passed away, but didn't pass over. And there's an attachment and she hasn't crossed over yet, isn't that? Um, so once that energy shifts and they find out the truth, they're like, what? The energy does shift. It completely changes. The phenomenon goes away, especially the repeated phenomenon. And that's where the human agent comes in, where most of this paranormal phenomenon, the general paranormal stuff, is stemmed from the human agent. We cause this. And that's where you get to this little quantum quandary of the paranormal. where, if a tree falls in the woods and there's nobody there, does it make a noise? You know, if I'm in this room and there's nobody else in that next room in my house, what's really going on in that room? What's really happening in that room if I'm not there to perceive it?
Mm-hmm.
Paranormal phenomenon could be happening all the time.
True.
But if we're not there, we will never perceive it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in my cases, in my theory is there's nothing supernatural. It's all natural.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what does happen are glitches. There's these things that happen, these anomalous things that happen within space-time, within the quantum universe, within reality, which is really no reality. It's perception. It's what we perceive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the paranormal happens. This is where this phenomena happens, is it's perception. It's how we perceive the universe in the here now. It's like in the movie The Matrix, when Neo sees that glitch in the Matrix. It's kind of like that in space-time. Within our perception, is it stemmed from the human agent. We are the potential cause of that phenomenon. And it's not to discount, I'm not discounting spirit at all. I'm never discounting spirit. That's why I'm a spiritualist. I mean, I talk to spirits. So, and it's not to discount that. It's to let people know that there's a much, 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 much bigger universe and cosmos and reality that's going on around us. Not just us. We're
For sure.
in it. We're in the soup.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
okay. So,
it's
Dr. Paul,
awesome.
you have given us a lot to think about. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your experience with us. Please tell our listeners again how they can find out more or hire you.
They can find me at consciousradionetwork.com. We have a weekly podcast, 2 shows. Right now it's 2 shows a week. Normally it's 1 show a week, but summertime it gets busy. But yeah, consciousradionetwork.com. And the website has a bunch of it's a one-stop shop. Everything's there. You can listen to our shows. You can go and seek consultation, and also keep an eye out for publishing a book before the end of the year. So that'll hopefully get out there on Amazon and some other places. It talks about the human agent and how we can get in touch with our true eternal selves.
So, for my listeners, be sure to show your appreciation by liking, sharing, or sharing a comment. These types of stories need to be heard so that people who are suffering with this type of problem can get the help that they need. And your likes, shares, and comments help that to happen. So, thank you all for being here. Ciao.